Somalia in the Horn of Africa.
It was a big bomb. It sucked all the air out of my lungs. There was a cloud of black smoke behind us.
Civil war has turned the capital Mogadishu into one of the most dangerous places on earth.
My family there is finished. My family.
This is a war being fought in our name. A government funded by Britain is battling Islamist insurgents accused of being Al-Qaeda's allies. But the government itself is accused of atrocities, of killing thousands of people, torturing their opponents, making refugees starve. Top officials in this government have strong links to Britain. The boss of the Secret Service has a home in Leicester. The deputy police chief has a home in Birmingham. The former Interior Minister has a British passport and a home in London. And the president, who's had a liver transplant in the UK, is a constant visitor. Dispatches investigates Britain's Somalia connection. This is the Castle Ward district of Leicester. Thousands of Somalis who've escaped the civil war live here in the UK. It's the last known address for a man called Mohammed Darwish.
He's worked Tesco Direct in Junction 18 near Northampton.
General Darwish used to work at Tesco Direct.
That's right, picking, packing.
He was packing peas.
That's right.
Okay.
For Tesco.
Mohammed Darwish has a different job now. He's the boss of Somalia's intelligence and counter-terrorism agency, the NSA. Some people in Leicester tell me his men detain people for ransom and expect their British relatives to pay.
They ask me money. They say $3,000 each person. I say I cannot afford $3,000. That guy, he's a criminal, really. He deserves to prosecute that what he done in Somalia.
I want to ask General Darwish about these allegations, but he's not at home, and his son doesn't want to talk.
Could you record somewhere else, please? No.
Yeah.
Could we talk? You
need to ask my permission.
Leytonstone, East London, the home of Mohammed Guled Gamadere. When I call, only his daughter is here.
I think, yeah, he likes East London, where we live. He likes the home that we have, made. And he feels comfortable here.
Mohammed Gamadere became the Interior Minister in a new British-backed Somali government. He's linked to accusations of obstructing humanitarian aid meant for the starving victims of war. Spark Hill, Birmingham, the home of Ahmed Tajir, who says he's a former employee of a division of Honda. Well, I've just met Ahmed Tajir's wife and his children, and it was very sad. She came to the door and she said that she disagreed strongly with what he was doing back in Somalia, that the government there was rubbish. She said, I have to take care of 6 children. I asked whether he was sending anything back to support the family, and she said no. Ahmed Tajir is now Deputy Police Chief in Mogadishu. His officers are accused of false arrest and extortion. His salary is paid for by Britain and other European countries. And this is the exclusive Cromwell Hospital in London. A patient called Abdullah Yusuf visits regularly for checkups after receiving a liver from a British donor. Britain's High Court found that 6 years ago, men under Mr. Yusuf's command assassinated Zara Abdullah's husband. He was a political rival in Somalia.
Got blood on his hand. Everybody knows he was associated with this murder.
Since then, Yusuf has been welcomed as the president of Somalia by Britain. He's now accused of complicity in the bombing of civilians. A police commissioner, a former minister, an intelligence chief, and a president, all backed by Britain and with strong connections to this country. I'm going to Somalia to track them down. That's anti-aircraft fire, yeah? Government troops are battling the Islamic insurgents. Right there, you can see the smoke rising from a mortar impact, and immediately after the explosion there were screams. There were children playing football down there only a few seconds ago. The gunfire has kicked off on the horizon. People are still walking around the street. There are people running down there, the cars racing around, people running back and forth. It's just a war of terror on both sides. Right, there's another one just a few blocks up there. Jesus, you can see the smoke rising from just right next to K4 and the Al Sahafi Hotel. That's right in the road, that's right in the street. There's no front line in this street fighting. Civilians die in the crossfire. There are definitely wounded back there. I heard screams. I set off to find the injured people. They're the latest victims in 18 months of slaughter as bad as Somalia has ever seen. The Medina is the only hospital in South Mogadishu. This bloodshed began when neighboring Ethiopia seized the city from its Islamist rulers. They installed a new Somali government they said would bring democracy. That's why Britain supports this government. But all it's brought is chaos. I find the family whose screams I heard when the mortar landed. The father sits at the bedside of his son, Ali. He says the mortar hit while they were at supper. Shrapnel ripped into Ali's body.
And where's he wounded?
Stomach.
And is it now okay?
Ali is fighting for his life.
Another operation. I hope he gets better quickly.
Okay, thank you.
Ali's mother is here with 3 other children.
And the shell landed about 5 meters away. So they are very lucky. Really, they are very lucky.
But look at this. This is just absolutely shocking.
Yes, it's
Your little girl?
Nice.
Okay, Hanan is 7 months old, and her arm is broken by one of the shrapnel fragments. He's got a little fragment.
So these are very
7,000 civilians have been killed in the latest fighting. The Medina's chief surgeon, Muhammad Yusuf, operates all day, every day. In South Mogadishu, the other hospitals have been bombed out of existence.
Here, explosion is continuous, gunshot is continuous. So what you get is a continuous wounded patient that you have to deal with.
"18 months ago, there was relative peace under Islamist rulers. But the West claimed they were sheltering Al-Qaeda. That's another reason why Britain supports the new government.
Insurgents are attacking some form of base. There's been a lot of government troop movements in the city, with them pulling back to different bases, and perhaps now the insurgents are trying to take advantage of that.
Most of the insurgents are supporters of the former Islamist regime. There are many men with British links involved in this violence, but I've heard serious allegations linked to 4 men in top positions, and I want to meet them. The first on my list is General Darwish from Leicester. Today he's Somalia's spy chief, running the National Security Agency. The previous regime may have been deposed, but Britain and America still see this half-destroyed city as a breeding ground for terrorism. That's why they're key allies of General Darwish's NSA. He says he's rounding up the West's enemies.
Behind me is the main central prison in Mogadishu. There are several other facilities, the notorious underground prison known as Barista Hizbiga, underneath the presidential palace, the CID headquarters, and about 16 different police stations. And the allegation is that there are hundreds of people who have been arrested without charge. You're a very brave man.
One man called Dahir agrees to talk. He says he's a simple shopkeeper. He was arrested and taken to a jail in the actual basement of General Darwish's NSA headquarters.
He says that in his cell there were 21 people in a space 4 meters by 4 meters. They were given plastic bags to use for urine and excrement. He said that their skin crawled and they had palpitations from the suffocating foul air. He said that many of the inmates were elderly or sick, but nobody was allowed to see a doctor or a relative, and only the inmates could take care of them.
He told me above them they could hear the screams of prisoners being tortured in the offices of General Darwish's headquarters.
Dahir says that he saw a fellow inmate in his cell who came back after a torture session with all of his fingernails and his toenails pulled out. He says that other inmates were beaten on their fingers, on their arms and on their knees, that they were tortured in other ways, such as being put up against a wall, having their legs kicked away from under them so that they bashed their heads on the floor. But these are specific allegations against the agency led by General Darwish.
He says NSA agents told him he'd be freed if